Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team. I'm Yetta Dekker, and today I'm here with Roz McLean. Hi, Roz.
Hi, Yetta. Good
Thrilled
to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. Roz is here to do a show from a different perspective than we've actually done before. We are talking to Roz as a previous client, because she is a previous client, and yet that's not the focus of the show, which I know you know that's normally what I do when I have a previous client in the chair. Today it is about why would we see a therapist while we're in the transition of a move, whether we're right-sizing up, right-sizing down, right-sizing to another city, or just relocating in general. So let's talk about that, Roz. Why would someone see a therapist when they're making a move?
Well, I think people really need to see a therapist whenever they're in a space where they're having difficulty deciding what to do, when they're stuck. And when you're making a move, you're usually making a move because you're in a time of transition. So you could be having a baby and need a larger house. You could be needing to right size and go into a smaller home because your kids have left home. Or, as in my case, you might need to get a bigger home because your kids have moved back home as adults. Or, I mean, there's so many different, you're moving towns because of a job. But every single one of those scenarios is about a transition in your life. And every transition involves buying or selling a home.
Most of them do, don't they?
Most of them.
I mean, it could be 2 generations or 3 generations moving into one home.
Yep.
Right?
Getting a granny suite. Like, there's just so many times that people are stuck about what they're going to do because they have multiple issues happening at the same time because of the transition.
Right, and moving is in the top 5 stressors to start with.
Huge.
Right?
Huge.
And now we throw into the mix 1 or 2, maybe even 3 additional stressors in addition to the fact that we're making a move.
That's right.
And so to navigate that whole process, and I know we've chatted a little bit about this in the past, is something we're not always equipped to do.
No, and it helps to have somebody else to talk to who has a different perspective, who can ask questions in a new way, in a fresh way, that gets you to think about where you are and what you might want to do.
And how you might do it.
And how you might do it. I never tell people what to do, but I'll say, you know, you're starting a new job, the place where you want to be able to do some work from home. Do you have room at your home for home office? Or is it quiet enough because you have children running around? Do you need to reconsider where you're living in order for you to be able to do the things you want to do? And sometimes people don't ask themselves that question. They go, oh, I never thought of that. Right. But I can come from outside and observe what's happening in your life and ask questions and get you to reconsider what you want to do.
And then even further than asking questions, I think, if I've asked myself the majority of the questions, maybe I've thought it through, I still may not have the skills or the tools to navigate making that move because maybe I'm dealing with a parent who's ill and who I'm bringing into my home.
That's right. That's right. So another pair of eyes and someone with other resources can help you make those decisions differently. Even people who've never bought a house, it helps when they talk to other people to say, what was that process like? Not just about, getting the mortgage but
yeah, because we're pretty good at that part.
Yeah, you're able to do that, but some people don't think about the feelings that they have because a lot of people, I remember the time when we bought our first home, they're anxious, really anxious about having this extra responsibility. And if there are people who like to do everything perfectly, then it's sometimes really stressful for them, maybe more stressful than it would be for somebody who's maybe a little bit more laid back and not as concerned about finances. And then the problem happens. What if you have 2 people and one of them in the couple is really concerned about finances and the other one isn't? Well, then it creates an issue for the couple. And so that's a good time to go talk to somebody else to say, this is what's happening. How can we negotiate it? And that's what I do a lot of the time. I'm just helping people negotiate their differences.
So when negotiating those differences, how do you connect with them to make that an easier negotiation versus one that's got a lot of volatility to it?
Sometimes it takes a little bit of skill, because when two people have been unable to negotiate differences for a long time and have trouble communicating, it takes another person to create space where you can ask each one. So I can ask the husband, the wife, even in families, you can ask a parent and a child, what is it that you're wanting? And then you can ask the questions to help them see the other person's perspective, right? Because sometimes we're so caught up in our relationships with people, we think we know what they're going to say.
Right. We're convinced, actually.
We're convinced. But we don't always. And so when I can get them to empathize with the other person and to see what their perspective is, then it's easier for them to negotiate what the differences are. And sometimes it's necessary to get them to agree to disagree. Many people think that they have to agree all the time, that the basis of relationship is that you walk in agreement all the time. But it's not true. Relationship means that you can honor what someone else believes without being in complete agreement with them.
Right. I know my husband and I, we don't agree on a whole lot, really. The foundational truth, yes, and beyond that, not so much. And even in our home, when we moved not that long ago, we had to figure out how to navigate those things that were important to him and not to me, or vice versa, and come up with certain times where we simply agreed to disagree. And you said, that's your you can have that project, that can be you do your gig and I'll do mine in this area.
Well, think of how many times. I'm sure that you've had opportunities when you're working with people. We see it all the time. I like watching Love It or List It. Our whole family watches Love It or List It. And I don't know how many times you go in there and they're always disagreeing about what they want. Yeah. Well, I want something modern and clean lawns, and I want something that's eclectic and cluttered, or I want this, or I want that. Well, those are perfect times to have somebody else there to say, what is this about? Why is it that you prefer this? How can we create a space for you that has both of those elements in it?
And often it's doable.
It's doable.
It's very doable. And so the reason it becomes stressy, I think, when there's a move, and why you might come and see Roz when it's time to make a move, is because there's probably, when it's communication, there's probably already some communication challenges. Yes, and so now, right, so you're bringing in other things into the move, and then you throw the move on top, and it could be just the straw that broke the camel's back if you don't have someone to assist you in navigating it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's that people get stuck in one story. So I often see people when they think this is the issue. So the issue is, my house is too small. But really, it's not that the house is too small. It might be that they haven't done some of the things they needed to do to create space there, because one of the people in the relationship really needs alone time, and they don't have a space to call their own, but they haven't really addressed that. Right. The other time people often come to see me is when their circumstances are so complex. They think this is the problem, but really, especially people in midlife, they are sandwiched between two generations. They've got their children. They might have elderly parents who are aging. They might be getting older, and some of their needs are changing. They might be changing a job. They might be retiring. They might have grandchildren on the way. And so all of a sudden, what was a simple lifestyle is no longer simple, and they're just not sure how to prioritize. Right. And it helps to talk with someone who's been through those things. So
you've been through them, haven't you?
A few of them. I think all of them, including the kids moving back. And
exactly. So you're coming at it from a therapist perspective, clearly, lots of training and lots of skills in terms of how to ask great questions and to bring them onto the same page. And you have a nice life experience that you can actually truly relate.
I remember when our daughter was small, and I had a small bungalow, and I had put the house up for sale. And so you've already been through the stressor of getting the house painted and decluttered and all of it's ready and the house is up for sale, and then we had a torrential downpour and there was a flat roof over the one portion of the kitchen and the roof collapsed.
Oh no.
Stressor, right?
Yeah, huge.
Small children, no roof, and we're trying to sell the house because we've already bought another house.
Oh, of course.
Right? I think there was a conditional offer. I don't think we
Okay.
were stuck. But it was complex. There were so many things going on, and it was stressful.
And so to have a therapist to come alongside and walk through that with you would have been hugely beneficial.
It would have been hugely beneficial. Talking to my daughter, who was maybe 2 years old at the time, wasn't very helpful.
Wasn't so helpful. So what kind of issues might people be facing before? We've talked about a few of them, but additionally, what might they be facing that would have them alert to the fact that it's time to give you a call?
When they can't communicate is one big one. Or when there's a lot of conflict. So I was starting to think, what happened each time when I moved? What created the stressors for me?
Yeah, what was it?
So I was thinking, trying to get the house ready. First of all, making the decision about whether we were going to move or not. And that can always, because one person might want to move and the other person might not. One person might be tied to the home, because your home has a lot of memories, and often there's a lot of baggage that's in the house, in boxes and things. So preparing to move then becomes a problem, because I remember the last move, I had boxes of children's stuff, like pictures and paintings that they had made and children's clothes I didn't need anymore. And I had to go through them. And so your memories flood over you, and there's some wonderful things, but it's hard to let go of those things because it's all in this little box, or 2 or 3
or 10
or a cupboard full.
Yeah.
But you don't want to let go of them because they represent all of those memories that are precious.
Right.
And so that becomes a difficulty. For people going through a divorce, it's often hard to leave a home where they were happy, but also alternately where they might not have been happy. And so it's closure to something. So sometimes selling the home is closure for something that they're having trouble letting go of.
Right.
So there are all sorts of different times. I've had many people come when they've gone through a divorce, and the whole process of having to clean out the house and to deal with things that were part of that couple identity that didn't exist anymore. Like who gets the painting. It's not just who gets the dog or the child, it's who is going to have the painting, and what happens to the house, and what happens to those memories. Who gets the pictures? Or do you want to keep the pictures, or did you torch them all? So there's a whole process that helps to talk to somebody else who can normalize it, because grief and loss are often a part of transition. Even if you're transitioning to something better, you're always letting go of something, even to enter into something new. So there's always grief and loss, but people don't think of grief often in terms of what you're letting go of from your past. I know I had to grieve, even though my children are still in my life, I had to grieve when we let go of certain houses because of what living there had meant.
Right.
To go to the new stuff. I was glad to be moving to the new house, and I was expectant, and I love to decorate, so I was looking forward to the next coat of paint and the material swatches and doing all of that stuff. But I still was having to let go of something from behind.
Which is hard.
It's hard. And when we don't do it, then sometimes that'll keep us stuck, and then we don't do the things we need to do in a timely fashion. So sometimes people stay in their homes longer than they need to. I'm sure you see that.
A lot.
And then people are not in a good place for moving. Like sometimes physically they should have moved earlier because they can't navigate the stairs anymore, or they don't have the strength to really do the packing and the moving. I know with parents, I've done that, where I've had to go in and pack up houses and move for them because they just don't have the strength and the resources to be able to do that for themselves anymore.
Own challenges, because people want to do for themselves more than have somebody else do it for them.
That's it.
Right? So I've watched a lot of, and it's painful to watch and be part of. Yeah. So
hard for the parents, hard for the children.
Hard for everybody.
Hard for everybody, yep.
If you're just joining us now on the Inside Track on Real Estate, I'm here with Roz McLean and Anyetta Dekker, and we're talking about the need or the resource that a great therapist like Roz can be in the middle of a transition when you're making a move. Even if you don't have other things going on, which you probably do at the same time, it is something where it can often be a real value. Preventative medicine is maybe the way I would call it. It's not because there's anything wrong. It's because if you work through the process with somebody that can come from outside as a sounding third party that's not full of biases, that isn't full of opinions, is more full of questions that can give you clarity that will make the whole transition and the move way easier.
It's true.
And so if you haven't heard the first half of the show, you're going to want to go back and listen to that. And now we're just going to continue talking about what does it mean by negotiating change? We talked a little bit about that at the beginning. And what does that mean? Like, can you expand on that a little bit for me?
Well, I think this is something we do particularly in midlife, but it's true of every transition. When you're in the middle of a transition, you're in a place where you're looking at your past and you're looking at your future. And in your present, you're really negotiating where you are presently to position yourself for your future. So,
except I may be stuck in my past.
Well, you could be stuck in your past, and it may got a couple of suitcases of things that might keep you in your past.
Right.
But when you're transitioning, you're really negotiating how you're going to make this change. And some people will negotiate that change slowly. Like, there's some people who are really careful, they're detail-oriented, they want to make sure that everything's right, all their ducks are in a row before they move. They'll be the people who have every box labeled with this goes in the dining room, and they'll have a number on each box. They'll have everything organized and be super organized about it. And then you'll have other people who might be more impulsive, they're quick to buy something, they'll throw everything in a box the day of the move. That would drive me crazy. But they'll throw everything in a box the day of the move. And their way of negotiating change is not as thorough as the person who's maybe more ordered about how they do things and more calculated about how they want to move forward. So negotiating change can be reflected in your pace, but it can also be reflected in whether you have a dream for your future or not. So some people get stuck because they don't have a dream. They don't dream forward. They don't have a vision that they're going to. They can't see that this new thing they're moving into is better than where they are. They sometimes are afraid, and so that can keep them stuck, like afraid of moving, because what's going to happen? The uncertainty of it will create great anxiety for them. What's going to happen if I move to this house? You know, I know this house I'm in. I'm afraid that I'm going to go here. So it's hard for them to negotiate. They'll stay stuck.
Right. I have clients right now where they're very different, and it was a 2-year process to even get the home on the market. And then it took quite a bit of time to sell, unfortunately. And then you start second guessing, should I have done it sooner? And so although we've sold the home now, there's still angst as to what is next. Where are we going? Because maybe we don't have full clarity as we thought we did when we started the process.
Yes, and sometimes when it happens over that long a period of time, what you think is going to happen at this point isn't necessarily what it's going to look like now.
Yeah.
My life might be completely different. Like, if I look back 2 or 3 years, what my life looked like then and what it looks like now is completely different. If I had stayed where I was living, it would not have accommodated some of the changes that have happened to me that I didn't expect.
Would you mind sharing a little personally? Because that will give people an opportunity to sort of get behind your eyes a little bit and what's going on for you. What are a few transitions that have happened over the last, we'll say, let's just go 5 years?
5 years, oh my goodness. If I go over 5 years, I have probably experienced at least 10 to 15 different kinds of moves.
Okay.
So I moved from one town to Ottawa. So going through that transition, I had to rebuild here. We did that as a family because my daughter and son-in-law have a grandson that we love, and not that we don't love them, but we're kind of
a little
in love
more
with the little guy.
yeah.
And so they were here. And so we were thinking, well, where do we want to position ourselves for our future? Do we want to stay where we are, which was too far away from them, or do we want to be here in Ottawa? So we decided to come here to Ottawa. Our son-in-law had come here for law school. My husband is a lawyer, so they decided they would start a practice here. So we have this parallel universe happening where the law practice has been moving with us here, and physically we have been moving in stages as a family. And so we've moved offices, we have moved homes.
Cottages.
And we sold a cottage, and what else did we sell? Just everything happened at once. And now, and I don't know how many years, for 2 years I think I had some of my furniture in one house in the other city, one house here that had some furniture, and then I had storage as well. So I think it was over 2 years. I didn't know where some of my things were, and it was actually a bit of an adventure to open the boxes when they finally came out of storage, and everything arrived in one place. So you talked about right sizing. I thought that was a great term because sometimes in midlife people consider downsizing.
Yeah, is the only option. Yeah.
And when we were making the decision about where we were going to go, what kind of home were we going to have, we really had to think about what our circumstances were, what area was going to suit us. So we wanted to be within walking distance of where we were going to work. So we've got an office within walking distance of
which was another move. You even had 2 of those in Ottawa because we helped you get that settled.
That's right. And then we bought a house that was probably bigger than what we needed, partly because I like having my own space, and partly because I wanted to be able to have my family. So it's really important for me to have a home where I can be hospitable and have people. And well, what's happened in the last year is that my family have moved in with us because they like being within walking distance of work too. And so my big home is now just big enough.
And there's another baby on the way.
And there's another baby on the way. That's right.
So that would be lots of transition.
I'm sure there's going to be more real estate transactions happening in the next little while to accommodate some of those changes.
So if people are facing a transition, how can you help them? Beyond sharing your stories, because those are in your mind. So because you don't even have to share your own stories, but your stories are there. So just because you have that, you can help them a lot because you've experienced most of it.
I know what questions to ask.
Right. And so
where is it that you are, and what stage are you in, and what is it that you're hoping for? What are you concerned about? And if tomorrow you could be in the house that you want to be in, what might it look like? And are you dreaming big enough? Because some people are afraid to dream bigger and to look at the possibility of maybe being in town or being out of town or thinking outside of what they might have considered initially. Like sometimes, I've lived in this area, I'm going to stay in this area.
And sometimes that's the perfect choice.
Sometimes it's a good choice. But sometimes if you give them space to consider something different, then they have the choice.
Right.
You know, is this really the best place for me? I had to do that after we'd moved to Ottawa. I was living in one area, and I wasn't completely happy living there.
And we did not help her by the way. Let's just reframe that a tiny bit. We hadn't actually met yet.
No, we hadn't met yet. And the house suited us for a season.
Yeah, a short season.
For a short season, but I didn't like that for me, I wanted someplace where I could go out walking and go to a store and get a coffee. And I was in a place where I had to get into my car to go someplace. And I realized that didn't suit me as a person. And the other thing, and it's a funny thing maybe, but when I was buying the new house, I wanted to have a house with stairs because I wanted to build my exercise
into the house. So we found a 3-story right in town, walking distance to everything.
That's it.
It's stunning.
Yeah, it's a beautiful home, and it feels like a home. It had different aspects that we had in other houses. That, because I love old houses, it has the fireplace, and it has the moldings that are kind of Edwardian, and I like that kind of thing. So it felt like I didn't transition. Actually, it didn't feel like a transition because it felt like I went home again. And I think that's the quality most people really need. They need a place where they can settle and be themselves, to feel like they're at home.
And that's what you help them do.
That's what I help them do.
Help them figure out what that looks like.
What would home look like to you?
Because I would have to say, having met a few thousand buyers and sellers now and helped a few thousand buyers and sellers, so I've probably met a whole lot more than a few thousand, that it's not always what they think it's going to be.
No.
Sometimes partway through, we go, yeah, let's just go try this. I know it's not what you've been describing. I know it's not what you believe you want. Let's just, on the off chance, because we've looked at everything that is like what you say you want, and it's all coming up short. So let's just check out another contrast.
That's it.
And instantly, they'll know whether it's home or not often, whether that was a good place to navigate. So for people making a transition, what's the thing you want everybody to know, besides to call you?
Transition is always uncomfortable. And transition always brings chaos. But without chaos, we don't have change. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, that's normal.
And that's a good thing you bring to the table.
And having somebody else who can be calm in the midst of your storm, and I've been in the midst of my storms, it's often helped when I could talk to somebody else and clarify what it was that I was actually thinking, what it was that I was feeling, what it was that I actually wanted.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Roz. And you'll want to give Roz a call. Can I give your number?
Sure.
Okay, you give it.
613-293-6455.
Say it again.
613-293-6455.
I don't have it memorized. And if you want to reach me and get a hold of Roz, you know how to reach us, 613-860-4663. And if you are in the middle of wanting a transition, we've got a couple of amazing properties in Blackburn Hamlet, a condominium townhouse with a garage, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. And we have a freehold townhouse, also a row unit, attached by garage, and it's a little bit bigger, similar area, both beautiful, one in the 200 range, one in the 300 range. Amazing properties that you might want to transition to. And if you're looking for something totally different than those, maybe you're looking to move into the Rideau Forest, Manotick area in the $1.5 million, $2 million. We got lots of inventory out there for that price range. You'll want to give us a call as well. So if you are interested in just about anything throughout the city, give us a call. We are here to help you and answer your questions. And if you just have something you need coaching on, some questions that you're not sure, give us a call, and look forward to connecting with you next time. Thank you, Roz.
Thanks,
that was
Heather.
so awesome. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you.